My name's Kevin. My wife Tina here. We run an urban mushroom farm. You might have seen us at the Prescott Farmers Market. My daughter, Prescott Farmers Market. We do several local restaurants here: Biga, Tourmet, uh, Farm Pro. Uh, Drawing a blank on the other one. Um, anyway, we produce about 200 pounds a week. I'm a lifelong gardener, forager, hunter, fisher, anything. I love it. I'd like to. A lot to add to the back to Eden. I want to change my whole talk. Okay, here. What do we got? Our mushroom for the soil, of course. The fungal kingdom is massive, and without the fungal kingdom, we would not have soil. They break down lignin. If you think about what life was like before things broke down in nature, we have huge carbon deposits, large oil deposits. That's because fungi had not yet developed the ability to break down lignin, and it would pile up on the soil in massive amounts to where it would just eventually get buried by earthquakes and tectonic activity and so on and so forth. The earth no longer produces oil in the same way because mainly oyster mushrooms break down primary lignin material. They call them white rot fungus. You'll see the examples back here that we brought. They're white rot fungus, meaning the mycelium is white. And rot being a rather relative term. They're not really rotting in any way. They produce a hyphae on the end of the mycelial sheath that's like a spear and pierces through the lignin and produces exudates that break that down. There's a lot of different funguses, and they fill every niche in nature. I'll try not to get too high level on you. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me. We're here for you, and any questions you have, I want to be able to answer. What do we got here? I got screens over here. I can't see them as well. Here's just some terms we can go over. Flush, meaning how many times you pick up mushrooms as you grow them. Pinning, cute little baby mushrooms growing. Pasteurization, very important. You want to kill off competing microbes so you can get exactly what you want to grow. Spawn is what we would call your source material for growing the mushrooms. Spores, kind of think of them like seeds. Sterilize is similar to pasteurization, but it actually kills all contaminants. Sterilization is 240 degrees and up. Supplements, yeah, most of that's pretty self-explanatory. This is a remediation project I'm working on now. We had a rental house and people sprayed really hard clay soils. In a subdivision like this, obviously they drive giant tractors around and compact the soil. Pool required giant tractors, very hard compacted soil. I had a beautiful garden there at one time, but now we're just adding wood chips. What I'm doing with the truck back here is I'm taking over all of our leftover mushroom stuff, just throwing it out the back, removing the bag, putting it on the ground, and putting a layer of wood chips over it. That really kicks up the microbial life in the soil, and that will eat the wood. We've had piles of stuff about yay high. Within a year, it's high. Within 2 years, it's just a lump, or 3 years about. Really breaks that stuff down and adds all that carbon back into the life cycle. So we capture a lot of carbon with our farming methods, and we really try not to waste anything. I wish there was a method that didn't require bags. Unfortunately, that's not really available for sterilization. Here we have mushrooms growing, my compost, see the mushrooms popping up. Seasonally, they grow like crazy. I've inoculated logs. Here's a log I planted in the ground. Look at that. That log produced mushrooms for 3 years. Can't remember what kind of wood it was. I think it was walnut. I think that was. So the thicker, harder woods, boy, they provide a lot of food for the mushrooms. That was a brown oyster, a real pretty color, huh? Here's some oysters popping up in the soil. Looks like some kind of squash is growing around it. More mushrooms growing up off logs buried in my soil. We picked these. I think we picked those in cottonwood. That's in cottonwood. Pick those off a stump. Eating oyster mushrooms are ubiquitous on cottonwoods in Arizona, and they're a desert-adapted one. We crossed them and grew them in our grow room for quite a few years. Quite the tasty mushroom. Very well adapted to the desert environment. So whenever the moisture gets above a certain, gets 3 afternoon rains, they just explode. Wine caps. amazing mushroom. We are actually doing a run of wine caps right now. If anybody's interested in getting wine caps, they are a primary wood eater, but they like it dirty. So they like to be close to the ground where they're going to get molds and competing funguses to try to mess with them. And they really thrive in that environment. Very tasty mushroom. That one really helps build soil very well. Morels, a mycorrhizal mushroom that is in season right now. Mycorrhizal meaning they attach themselves to the roots of plants. 80 to 85% of all plants on our continent are mycorrhizal to some extent. Take, for instance, our lodgepole pine forest that we would do all over the Pacific and California and up. They took huge container ships of these seedlings started in sterile soil down to South America. Wonderful idea, right? Clear cut the beautiful rainforest and plant pine so you can grow stuff for the American market and sell back to us on giant ships. Yeah, wonderful. Anyway, they grew fine for about 3 years and then they all started to die and wilt. They did not have the mycorrhizal fungus in South America that they do here in the United States, which are amazing. We got boletes, lobsters, chanterelles, morels, all mycorrhizal. Here's us picking in the wild. These are fairly common mushrooms. I'm not sure if those are saprophytic or mycorrhizal. Puffballs. My wife with a puffball. Yeah. Big round ones. I've seen them huge. Huge. They kind of taste like tofu, very edible. Yeah. People use them like pizza crust. You cut them real thin and cook a pizza on it. But tofu's not my thing. That one on the end there with the little dots all over it, you'll see those all over on stumps around here. You pick them, they smell like garlic. Not a very tasty mushroom. And I think it upsets your stomach, but it's not poisonous. The most common mushroom you will see in your garden, these should come up before anything else. Get a couple of days of rain, you get these Copernicus species. Copernicus diliques, you see the ones up in the corner there that turning black? Their little niche in nature is they want bugs to spread their spores. So they create this sticky spory mass, fly lands on it, flies away with sticky stuff all over it, helps spread those spores. They're in all commercial compost. Anything you get in any of the box stores, you should see those pop up. There are several, they're edible. These little ones are not so much. Some of them dangerous in combination with alcohol, so be careful with that. In fact, they make a medicine that they give to alcoholics they've discovered through that mushroom. I forget what it's called, coperniciine or something. And it makes you sick if you try to drink. Black pearls, there's my yard. You can see where grass isn't growing because deep piles of compost, chestnuts. Here we go. There's a mycorrhizal species that's interesting in Arizona. These associate with conifers and are fairly ubiquitous. We live in the mushroom capital of the world for these particular species. You see the coloration there of the orange is actually a fungus that's parasitizing a mushroom, which makes it quite tasty. The mushroom itself would be a white brittle cap mushroom. I forget the name off the top of my head. Anyway, they're not tasty at all. They're not dangerous or anything. Most mushrooms aren't tasty or dangerous. They're just mushrooms. Yeah, but there's mushrooms everywhere on everything. There's a harvest of lobsters. Overview of the mushroom life cycle here. The hyphal knots I was talking about, spore germination, sporulations. You can get really complicated on this stuff. Just kind of a broad overview. Yeah. Fat, protein contents, vitamin contents. Most mushrooms produce vitamin D and breathe oxygen, believe it or not. We are more related to mushrooms than we are to plants. That makes their amino acid profile very easy to uptake into our bodies. Of the edible mushrooms, they're super healthy for you. Okay, was that the end of our presentation? And we can throw on the slideshow here, and I'll just keep checking. You guys can ask me questions. We'll get some pictures going so you don't have to just look at me.
It's poisonous, don't touch it, don't eat it, don't mess with it. And you're talking about all these mushrooms. That's kind of crazy.
Relatively good advice. until you start learning. Most people start with lobsters in this area because we are the lobster capital of the world. Once you learn lobsters, pretty easy to identify. You move into your next mushroom that you're going to want to find and forage would be in your bolete family. Bolete don't have gills. So once you start learning about gilled mushrooms versus non-gilled mushrooms and learn a little bit about their life cycles, pretty easy to identify the healthy ones. I would stay away from anything that comes up out of an egg in the ground. Those are your only really deadly ones in this area. Yeah. Oh, get into it. Join the Arizona Mushroom Society. Go out with other foragers. And when we have a good wet year, it is amazing. Arizona Mushroom Society, great group of people, $15 for the whole family for the year. And then, as monsoons start coming on, it's something great to do seasonally here. Right now it's morel season. We're kind of on the end of it. Morels are very easy to identify and very tasty.
Right. It's wet. Gravel.
Yeah, a lot of people worry about those. We have several white mushrooms that pop up in the yard. The only one you really got to worry about is the green spore parasol mushroom or Phydium multibites. Anyway, it's a white mushroom with usually has some dots on the cap or a cracked cap because it dries out on top. And then you'll see they do have green spores. Those can be dangerous. Some dogs have a bad reaction to them occasionally. Kills a dog, but not these. More of a than a clean you out kind of mushroom, but not particularly dangerous. Deaths are very rare from them. Deaths from mushrooms in general are extremely rare, and it's mostly people looking for psychedelics, young men. You know what I mean? Oh, this is going to get me high. And they eat deadly galerina is the one you really got to be scared of. But not very common in Arizona. And we don't get any psychedelic species of note here in Arizona. On iNaturalist, which is a great app, we only have 5 or 6 reported sightings. And they're a mycorrhizal that grows like up above 9,000 feet. And they're believed to be associated with grass, particular type of grass that grows in very high elevations. So not a lot of people out here finding mushrooms to get high with.
Question online was, where's the best place to get wood chips?
Chip drop. Best place to get wood chips, in my opinion, is find a truck running around, be very nice to the driver, probably buy them a nice big thing of beer. And that's how I get my wood chips. I buy them beer.
Some wood chips that are not good.
All wood chips make beautiful soil. A lot of people are scared of oleanders. A lot of mushrooms don't like pine. Pine produces an exudate. There is a mushroom that we do grow that you can add to your pine chip piles that does very well in Arizona. It's called the Pulmonarius oyster. Wonderful tasting. My favorite tasting oyster. Go ahead.
They say you can eat any mushroom once. Is there any particular mushroom, like identifiers, like if you were gonna go scope out stuff that you would say, kind of like with snakes, like yellow and black?
Yes, here, Arizona, you dig up around the base of the mushroom. If there's like an egg in the ground that the mushroom is shooting out of, and you'll see portions of that beal still attached on the egg, and it shoots up really fast. We do have one edible variety called the Sun Caesar. I don't know if you guys have ever been out a beautiful monsoon season, and you'll see these giant yellow mushrooms. Those are edible. They taste kind of like a penny.
Swap you out, turn off your back.
How's that? Still sound wonderful? Yes. So those are the, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. The family of mushrooms that shoot up out of an egg. In any event, dig around the base of the mushroom. Join the Arizona Mushroom Society. If you have questions, reach out to experts. The mushroom community is great. Take a picture above so you get in situ. You can see the surroundings. Maybe cut the mushroom in half, get a picture of the inside, maybe get a picture of the underside. So break it off, turn it over, take a picture, get multiple angles. And then you can post those pictures online, and people love to answer those questions. We all love to share our love of mycology. It's a very interesting community. And then, we're doing a NAMA foray this year. Strawberry, I believe. They'll be cooking and whatnot. Without any questions going, I'd like to talk. Go ahead. You got me. That's right where I was going. So we're very big on white rot fungi. That's my specialty. And they're primary eaters, I like to say. So they like to eat pretty clean material. So any clean material you can get that's lignin. Lignin is just wood, right? Think cardboard, coffee grounds, anything like that that's pretty clean. Coffee grounds are super clean because you boiled them, right? You can lay out some cardboard, get a bag of the mycelium, put a layer out, maybe a layer of straw, anything that's pretty clean material. I try to tell people stay away from heavy nutrient stuff. So don't put like alfalfa, that kind of hay that would be for horses, things like that, very high in nitrogen. You're going to invite a lot of competitive funguses in as it gets wet. And that spot in your yard that doesn't really want to even grow grass, weeds don't really pop up there too often because it's kind of wet and, shady and dark. That's the spot where you're going to want to add in your mushroom growth. But you can grow mushrooms anywhere in your garden if you're doing a deeper wood chip bed, like the back to Eden method. So you're going to, once you get the wood chip method, you got to kind of think about your heat levels. 3 inches below is where you're going to want your mushrooms. In the winter, no big deal. Just get them in there. We give away a ton of stuff. Truckloads. Come to my house and take them. Right now we're doing this remediation project, so I haven't been giving away a lot, but we've got a lot of customers that use it.
Can you jump a little bit into what you mean by remediation? What are you remediating?
Mushrooms break down hydrocarbon bonds. So all of your bad things in nature right now are synthetics, made from oil, things of that nature. So by having something that breaks that hydrocarbon bond, you're making the materials inert. So glyphosate, your synthetic salts, your NPK stuff that adds a lot of synthetic salts to your soil. They also produce exudates. Mushrooms' little niche in nature is that they're releasing, let's say how to word this. They're releasing micronutrients from the rocks and the soils. So there's enough of your little micronutrients in any tablespoon of soil to feed an entire acre of crops, right? It's just locked up. So the more you unbind those nutrients through fungal activity is how you get all your micronutrients.
Oh, that's okay.
Shoot.
It's not going to grow where there's not good wood carbon material, right?
No, they'll lay, depending on your types, they will lay dormant in the soil. The mycorrhizal ones will live in the roots of plants, better with having some perennials mixed into your system in order to promote that. Almost, like I said, 90% or more require some kind of mycorrhizal. So all that stuff is inherent in nature. There's a lot of interesting ways you can bring in your more native mycorrhizae. Some people will do like a lightly cooked rice, put it in a mesh bag, take it out into nature, lay it under some pine duff. It'll pick up all those spores and whatnot, start to grow into the rice, take it home, you add that to your systems. Adding in, there's a lot of commercial applications now where you can get mycorrhizal. It's rather in its infancy. You know what I mean?
What something looked like that needed to be repeated, and what would it look like after?
For me, glyphosate produces heavy enzymatic activity in like grasses and weeds that you see the growth get bastardized. Like Bermuda grass will turn into this little pronged instead of these beautiful long, strands of grass that are reaching. Glyphosate or atrazine will damage the growth and the cell walls will rupture, creating like these puffs. You see stuff like that, you really want to start remediating that soil. It's hard to tell without testing, but a trained eye will kind of get a feel for what's bad soil. You know what I mean? Mushrooms will tend to lock up heavy metals in their cell walls in order to protect their plant hosts. If you do have heavy metals, if you think you might have heavy metals, you might want to avoid eating any mushrooms from your garden, but they will bind that up in the life cycle and help keep it from the plants so that they can survive. A lot of mushrooms, a lot of fungi can live indefinitely in nature. They only produce a mushroom in order to spread their spores. And different mushrooms have different life cycle. Most mushrooms are dikaryotic, meaning they need, much like a human, a male and a female. So if they're too closely related on the familial tree, they won't breed.
You got lots of questions.
Go for it.
So if you have like a deep wood mulch, like at this point where a deep wood mulch, like water, but not quite anaerobic and sewage and stinky kind of smelling. Would mushrooms or mycorrhiza do well in that environment to remediate that?
No, not really at all. You're by going anaerobic, you're inviting different organisms. They're still in the fungal kingdom. And when they die, they'll become great food for your soil. But in the interim, you're excluding the more, different funguses that you would prefer to have in a better system, which isn't necessarily bad. But when you see it happening, you want to try to push your fungal activity towards good fungus, not anaerobic funguses that stink. Gardening shouldn't stink. Go ahead.
Is it on? I had a question. So you were saying that the mycorrhizae will attach itself to the plant roots. What's the benefit of it, of the whole process? Why should I put this into my soil?
We do not fully understand, but it is impossible to not have this in a complete life cycle. It's much like your gut microbes help digest your food, and we have more, different organisms within us than we actually do our own cells. It's a complete cycle of nature that's not yet fully understood. But in essence, it's believed that mushrooms don't really produce sugars. So they're sharing different nutrients and getting what they can't produce. Although this is not, it's a generalization. There are plants that feed on funguses and funguses that feed on plants. My specialty is primary eating funguses. I don't know if people have seen ghost pipe. They grow up around here. Beautiful, beautiful plant. And it's a plant that is parasitizing fungus in the ground. And they do not produce chlorophyll because they get all the nutrients they need from the funguses that are getting nutrients from the plants.
Is that similar to the amoeba thing that was yellow that grows in my wood chips?
They're not really considered, they're only considered, they're in the fungal family, the dog vomit fungus. It's an actual fungus. It's not a mushroom, but it's a fungus. It's considered amoeba in that it's intelligent and they'll run mazes to get to food.
Okay.
So that's where the term amoeba comes. And they've been studied quite extensively for that. They know where the food is somehow. They don't have eyes, ears, or anything that we can understand in order to see their exterior world, but they can run a maze to get to where the food is. It's quite interesting what they do. Those are very fascinating funguses. Kind of want to avoid them in your garden because they produce a lot of spores. Too much spores in your lungs can be dangerous, especially if you're immunocompromised. And you'll see they produce a black mat after they die away. And they're so hydrophobic that if you spray water on it, it creates a huge cloud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that hydrophobic nature of their spore mat is pretty interesting. You want to avoid breathing large amounts of spores.
Yeah.
Not necessarily dangerous, but it could be.
Follow up, I think. Follow up.
So I've read that if I add the mycorrhizae, like let's say I buy a bag of your mushrooms and I collect all the mushrooms from it and I have this bag left over. Can I add that to my soil if it's just normal like garden soil from Home Depot?
You could. These particular types of mushrooms probably won't do well. If you wanted to do something with these types of mushrooms, again, you'd want to feed them, lignin rich and hopefully get more mushrooms for your diet out of it. But they're not necessarily, they will live in the soil and they will eat, dead roots and things in the ground, and they will survive in the soil. They're not necessarily mycorrhizal. The main benefit of particularly oyster mushrooms is they hunt nematodes in the soil. So that is they do live in the roots and eat the material in the ground, and they will survive in there in a no-till system, do well, and you will get that adapted into your environment, and they will help with the nematode issues. If I dig up my yard, you will see hundreds of those. I'm drawing a blank on the name, those beautiful beetles. And they'll die before they come out of their larval form. And you'll dig up my soil and find these beautiful shells of them beetles. I forget the name of the beetle off the top of my head. And they eat them like candy in the soil. Go ahead.
Bokashi, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, bokashi is an interesting fungal way to compost. I've tried bokashi. It's really interesting. It really helps. It's a non-anaerobic way to create compost. And bokashi is a fungus that it's considered a ferment. Ferment is also in the fungal kingdom, cheeses and things of that nature.
You got 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Yeah, bokashi is an interesting method. I'm not an expert on bokashi. I've worked with it a little bit, and I think it works well to have different types of funguses in your systems. And if bokashi works for you, especially in a small composting situation at home, it's wonderful. I produce a little bit more waste than that. So I do kind of an in-ground composting method personally. I'm a lazy gardener.
So 2 questions. The first is back to actually growing this, so I can put it in maybe a north side of the house on a cardboard. Do you heavily water that? Do you
Moist.
ignore it? What do you?
Well, again, too much water will create that anaerobic environment and invite those microbes that smell. So light watering, some people cover with a tarp when it's real dry out. I don't really worry about it. I'm a lazy gardener. Do an extra layer of straw over the top. Cardboard works well for that because it's a pretty tight layer, over the top and kind of keeps out, but the moisture naturally will rise up from the ground. Okay. So, moist, but you don't want to keep it, at first you're going to water it in.
You water it like once a week and keep the cardboard moist?
Yeah, when it's really hot and dry. Okay. In the winter, I wouldn't even worry about it. I would ignore it all winter. Well, in the summer, it's pretty dry and hot. Come monsoon season, ignore it.
Okay.
They'll start growing come monsoon season here. Cold nights and moisture in the air, boom, they start popping like crazy.
Okay. And second question, sorry, but you made a comment about the nematoids. I thought nematoids were good to get rid of the grubs. And what's this whole cycle?
Not fully understood. It's really hard to figure out what's going on under the ground. But it's rather interesting that oysters eat bugs in the ground. I would imagine that they're trying to preferential some kind of host system. Everything fills some kind of niche in nature, and you really have to understand their niche, and it's very difficult to do because we have no idea what's happening under our feet. There's probably miles of mycelium under where we are here because of all the moisture that gets stored in here, and the concrete is releasing rather interesting enzymes into the system, and all in nature, something is trying to bring balance to everything. There's some balance to all systems, and fungi fill most of those niches. Done?
Yeah. If that's it, no more questions. We'll have more time for questions also after. So let's give Kevin a great round of applause. That was very informative. So you guys go ahead and take a break. We got another 10 minutes to take a break, stretch your legs, get some treats, and we'll meet back here and have a live session with Creedmoor Fury from North Carolina.